I got into this game because I wanted to make the world a better place. Okay, I did not get into this game to reinvent Wall Street with more complications, with more intermediaries. That's not what I'm interested in. When I look at other chains, I see a direct motion in that direction. This MEV extraction and the various things that people are doing to fight it are causing systems to be more centralized. And the techniques that they are proposing for fixing their own ailments, their own scalability issues, are making many chains incredibly centralized, with power concentrated in incredibly few hands. And if that's the future that we're going to live in, I don't want to be here.
All right, here we are with Emin Gün Sirer, the founder and CEO of Ava Labs, maker of the Avalanche blockchain. Emin, it's so great to have you back on the Defiant podcast.
Great to be here, Cami. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's start with a background on you, and then we can move to Avalanche, because obviously you've been around the space for a long while, through OG.
Very long time.
Very deeply involved in the early days of Ethereum. We met when I first interviewed you for my book. You had a relevant role on the DAO hack. So if you can just provide a bit of context.
Sure. Let's see. I was a professor at Cornell University in computer science for about 19 years. And when I started teaching there as a very, very young assistant professor back in 2001, 2002, that's when I got into crypto, even though it wasn't called crypto back then. And what we were doing at the time was developing peer-to-peer systems. I was always interested in systems that organize themselves and build something interesting, big on their own. So I was looking at file sharing systems at the time, and they suffered from a common problem, which is everybody wants to download, everybody wants to take resources, nobody wants to contribute resources, nobody wants to upload files. So I thought, well, why don't I invent some kind of a decentralized internet currency, magic internet money, so that if you just take things, you run out of the money, and then now you have to be a better person. So I invented this thing called Karma with my students. It was published in 2003, and it had proof of work minting in it. It's the first such built system to do so. And it predates Bitcoin by about 6 years or so. Now, to be clear, Satoshi did invent something better than Karma. He folded the consensus protocol into the proof of work mechanism. But we were there before then. Then Bitcoin came along. I'll try to make this story very brief. I found with Itai Eyal, who's a professor now at the Technion, Itai and I found the biggest known flaw in Bitcoin. So if people followed our strategy and not Satoshi's, they would make more money as miners. This also invalidated a bunch of claims that were made by Satoshi. I got a lot of death threats. There was a whole operation to try to get Cornell to fire me. By then I had tenure, so that was really nice. But to everyone's credit, there were 3 crowdfunded projects to try to discredit us. They all folded. They all spun around and said, we can't prove them wrong. What they're saying is exactly right.
Interesting.
So that was the selfish mining saga. And by the end of that, the Bitcoin community realized that I actually deeply believed in internet currencies, and we were trying to understand their properties. We were trying to make them better. So after that, I worked on decentralization. I worked on security. In came the DAO hack on Ethereum. I wrote a paper called "A Call for a Moratorium on the DAO," and the hacker, he did not. He ended up using one of the bugs that we found in the DAO. And anyway, long story short, I worked on every aspect of the software stack over the next years. I built fast L2s. I built the world's fastest layer 2 and for Bitcoin, and did a bunch of other things. But most importantly, the thing that brings me here today is the work that I did about 5 years ago, which led to the creation of the Avalanche blockchain. It represents the biggest breakthrough in the space of cryptocurrencies, in the space of distributed systems, in the space of consensus protocols. We built the world's fastest consensus protocol, the most decentralized consensus protocol.
So how is Avalanche better? You're saying it's a big breakthrough in all of crypto, so that that implies that Avalanche is better than Bitcoin, than Ethereum. How is Avalanche innovating here, and what makes it better?
Well, okay, so I wouldn't make a blanket statement that says, oh, Avalanche is better than Bitcoin, but I can tell you the technical areas in which it's different from everybody else. And so therefore it has a different set of use cases. Bitcoin's use case is well established. That's different. So let's put that aside. But if you look at the evolution of cryptocurrencies from a distributed systems perspective, you see a couple of things happening. First of all, there are only 3 different approaches to the most critical operation, which is consensus. There is Bitcoin and proof of work, which requires mining and is very expensive and very, very energy consuming. There is then the set of proof of stake protocols that are other than Avalanche. They're based on classical consensus. They require all-to-all communication. So Ethereum, Solana, you name it, they're all, if they're using proof of stake today and they're not Avalanche, then they are using a classical consensus protocol, and those don't scale. They scale to about 100, maybe a few hundred participants per decision, and all of these systems are actually highly centralized at each decision. Avalanche is different. It uses a very different mechanism to achieve consensus that's super fast in terms of latency, super high throughput, and it's decentralized. But there is one other way in which Avalanche differs. So if you look at the architecture of the system, so there are multiple innovations in Avalanche. If you look at the architecture of the system, you see Bitcoin, the very first system. It's a single network and a single asset. People are retrofitting like ordinals and stuff on top, but really the main asset is BTC, and there's a single network. Then you have the second generation coins, and so you have Ethereum, Solana, and others, which are single network, multiple assets. Ethereum is used to create a variety of assets. So if you look at a third generation system like Avalanche, these are multi-chain, multi-asset systems. So you can create multiple assets, and all those assets can live on a main chain if you like. We have something called the C chain that they live on usually. But you can also create your own chain. And so what Avalanche allows people to do is it allows people to have their own custom unique chain that is separate, that works differently than others. So if you have a game that's super demanding, then you can have your own chain. If you have an institutional effort to put real world assets online, well, then you can create a chain dedicated to your use case that's compliant. So we're not alone in this. There are 2 other systems that are similar to us, Cosmos and Polkadot, but we are the leading one of those 3, and we differ from those 2 as well in various different sort of more geeky ways, but I won't get into them. But we represent the latest in terms of science and technology of blockchains. That was really the thing that actually motivated me to leave academia. I wanted to bring the best of science. I kept looking around and watching people build sort of mediocre systems with old technology, and I thought, hey, we know how to do better. I can improve on this.
So we've seen, as you mentioned, a couple of other multi-chain, multi-asset blockchains, Cosmos and Polkadot, but they've, really struggled to gain a lot of traction. Avalanche, by all metrics, has been more successful than those, but still behind for so far the single chain systems, obviously Solana, Ethereum. First, without getting into the really more geeky technical aspects, but what do you think differentiates you against the other multi-chain systems? And why do you think you're still kind of lagging other of the single chain systems? Sure.
So there's a time and place for everything, right? And so we saw the world try to absorb the new technologies that are coming out, and so we were far ahead of our time, and that's not always a great thing, but in many ways it's actually a good thing if you persevere and have the ability to stay through, and you are here for a very long time. Then you're going to win because the world will catch up. So what did we see? Well, we saw the FTX saga. We saw a very derelict sort of last couple of years. We saw a very sideways motion in crypto. We saw a lot of people trying to get rich overnight as opposed to systems and people and teams that are really trying to build the technology that can absorb the growth that's going to happen in blockchains. So, of course, if you have a single chain, and you build a community around it, you're going to do kind of okay. That's fine. That's okay. Like for what we went through, that was the right architecture. If you want to have a meme coin, you should have all your meme coins on some crappy chain that doesn't really matter if it goes down or up, if, at any one time. It does. Nobody really cares if it's centralized even, right? So that's okay. We lived through that phase. If you are here for the long term, if you are here building for the future that we know is just around the corner, then the right architecture is the one that we built. And we're miles ahead or light years ahead of the competition there. If you look at a demanding game like Off the Grid, it's based on, I think they onboarded 16 million users. These are KYC'd actual users. So that's more users than most of the coins of the last cycle combined. And that's not even Avalanche. That's just one aspect of Avalanche. At the same time, we have FIFA coming online with their own chain, powered by their own tokens built on Avalanche. At the same time, we have institutionals on Wall Street building their own walled gardens for their own uses. We have JP Morgan using Avalanche to do repo trades. So there's a lot of buildup going on, and we are not here to do the expedient thing. We're here to really build the technology, and we feel that we are the only ones who has the multi-chain architecture, the interchain communication, the uniformity of multiple chains acting as one. And as well as, I think a critical thing that gets overlooked is the connections to institutionals who are coming online. So we haven't seen crypto hit mainstream yet. We've only seen it in a couple of areas. Stablecoins are now gaining popularity. They have product market fit. Games are coming online thanks to us. Institutionals are coming online again thanks to us. So I'm very, very hopeful about what's going to happen. It's amazing to be at the forefront of that technology.
The PR Genius is a top crypto PR and growth marketing agency, helping brands globally with expert PR and strategic growth marketing. They've worked with 300 plus projects like Movement Labs and IO.net. Unlike traditional agencies, they charge only on performance. Their services include earned PR opportunities and marketing services to help boost wallet holders and organic X followers. Learn more at www.theprgenius.com.
You've criticized the layer 2 scaling system that Ethereum has, and you can draw similarities between a multi-chain system and Ethereum's layer 2 system. How is a native L1 system better than Ethereum's layer 2 scaling?
It seems like there are some similarities between a natively multi-chain effort and a YOLO effort where you say, look, I ran out of ideas. I don't know how to scale my system anymore. Won't you guys please build your own L2s and help me scale my bottom layer? So they seem similar. How are they similar? Because there are multiple chains going on. But there are some fundamental differences. And I think the biggest one is going to be at the social, the last one. But let me go start with the technical ones. First of all, the moment you go to a layer 2 approach, or the moment where you say, well, look, I'm running out of ideas. I don't know how to scale my bottommost level layer, the most important layer, then you end up fracturing your liquidity. Everybody gets into the game of creating layer 2s. Every single person that I knew from the Ethereum community ended up getting involved in some layer 2 effort. There are like family members of notable people creating their own layer 2s. It's an easy game, right? You just take some little code, you take Geth, you run it on somebody's laptop. Nobody even knows how decentralized these things are. And so number one, you fracture your liquidity, right? So a swap that would cost you a little bit of slippage now costs you a lot in slippage. These layer 2s are not easy to use, but they most of all, they provide a terrible user experience to their users because there isn't enough liquidity behind any one of them. There is no centralized, there is no place that collects capital. Number two is the user experience is awful because you don't know where to go to affect your trade. Which of those layer 2s is the best one? Hard to tell. Number three, these things fracture they create a sort of a winner-takes-all kind of a dynamic. And what's the dynamic here? You had a chain that didn't work, right? It was croaking under load. People were paying $500 per transaction to get a transaction in. Now you have all these L2s. Well, so those L2s are trying to vie for the exact same use case. What didn't work in Geth at this layer, now you're trying to make it work at another layer using no new technology. How is that going to be any better? You punted the ball to somebody else who's just about as clueless as you are. And if they succeed and it's a winner-takes-all game, then the problem will recreate itself at the next layer because you didn't really solve it. You just said, I ran out of ideas, now somebody else should come in. But the worst of all, I think, and this is the social layer, is that it creates a dynamic where it's in everybody's interest to essentially go through the same playbook. And what's the playbook? They say, hey, we're going to have a layer 2 to help Ethereum. We're Ethereum aligned. Look, I've got a selfie with Vitalik. And Vitalik is a very good friend of mine, by the way. You don't see me posting pictures. In fact, last time we got together, I invited him to my mom's house and, where my mom is. But we're not going to mention locations. But and we just don't post those things. I think it's a terrible look for a system to be basing its value on proximity.
A single person.
Proximity to Vitalik, proximity to Ethereum. But that's how they start. They're like, oh, we're here to help Ethereum. And then what do they do next? They end up cannibalizing Ethereum. They don't bring in new use cases. They steal from the underlying system. They partition it out, they part it out, and they try to make some money based on the transactions fees they collect. And if you look at the best of L2s, where are they? They're nowhere to be found. But the most toxic thing about this is that the community is now divided. The genie's out of the box. There's no putting it back. Everybody wants to start their own layer 2s, and all of those layer 2s are in competition with each other. So this is very different from a system that, from the get-go, provides a uniform mechanism for cooperative chains to work together. So on Avalanche, most of our liquidity is on a single chain. If you want to do a swap most efficiently, you can do it transparently and easily with just a single click. From whichever chain you're on, you go to the C chain where the liquidity is, perform your swap, you go back. And that architecture is much better technically. It's much more capital efficient than the layer 2 architecture, the YOLO, I ran out, you guys now do something kind of an approach.
So the difference is with a single chain and layer 2s, you fracture liquidity and there's this UX problem of going chain to chain. Well, Ethereum says it is working on both of those things, improving UX. They say that they are now focusing on scaling and bringing as many people in. And then they'll figure out kind of the economics.
Sure, we've heard that for many, many, many years. So remember, Ethereum went through, let's go through this. Ethereum went through verifiable delay functions. You remember those. Ethereum Foundation was going to start a competition for people to build verifiable delay function solvers. There would be specialized hardware that people would create with incentives from the Ethereum Foundation, and VDFs would help Ethereum scale. It went nowhere. It turned out to be infeasible. It was going to use verifiable random functions, VRFs, went nowhere. It was going to use accumulators.
They've had many like starts and stops.
Oh, you're stopping me because you know I can go on for another dozen of these.
I just wanted to kind of make sure that I include kind of their counter arguments.
Yeah, no, they have some legitimate arguments.
Yeah.
So look, all of these are shiny gadgets, okay? And the Ethereum community has essentially been suffering from this shiny gadget syndrome. Every time one of these new things comes up, it comes up in the crypto literature. I mean cryptography literature, not cryptocurrency literature. Comes up in the cryptography literature. And I mean, these are, when I say literature, these are journals or conferences that I used to chair or be on the steering committee of. So we're sort of in the, we're in a knowledgeable position about these things.
Of course.
And I could tell that they were going to go nowhere. But for Ethereum, it always needed that dangling shiny object for people to glom onto, for people to say, well, we don't scale now, but someday maybe we will. And that's sort of what's happened at the social level in Ethereum. And it's, they got kind of dragged along. I don't think the main chain has scaled at all. I think they caught on way too late to the fact that you need to scale the chain. There are a bunch of other things that they need to catch on to in terms of metrics, how you measure scaling, etc. That I had been telling them back in the day. Like I didn't want to start Avalanche. I just saw that, hey, with this set of people, it's not gonna be possible to have the effect that we want to have in the amount of time that we would like to have. So and so now you see where we are technologically. We have millions of users per day on Avalanche, and there are some really, really demanding games. with, again, huge numbers of users. They're not affecting anybody else. You don't see the fee spikes that you used to see with all these single chain systems. So I think we demonstrated to the world how to do these things.
I think the key difference that you mentioned versus L2s is this shared liquidity. So there's no fragmentation and no UX issues. Because how is interoperability between different Avalanche L1s? Is it easy to...
Absolutely trivial. So if you create your own coin right now, you could use your own coin for securing your network, for paying your own gas fees, and with a click of a button, you can transfer that coin to any other chain that admits or supports your token. So it's super trivial to do all these things on Avalanche. It's going to take, I think, years for anybody else to come to where we are.
So I think for Avalanche, this is, just from my own perspective, I think it's been kind of hard to wrap my head around kind of the narrative or like the edge, right? Because there are other chains that are multi-layer one or multi-chain and multi-asset. And I think that there's maybe something emerging around institutions and RWAs, maybe like more on the institutional side, on the enterprise side. But I don't know, that's my own perspective. Would love kind of from your side, like Ethereum right now is trying to shift the narrative to digital oil. Yeah. Bitcoin is very positioned as digital gold. But like what would you want Avalanche to be known for in kind of like simple terms, just like
highest tech? That's plain and simple. Look, we always resisted these simplified sound bites for the muggles. Okay, so when I hear digital gold, okay, but that evokes something. I'm okay with that. But digital oil, I don't know what the hell that means. What is digital oil? And So Avalanche outdoes all of these things all of these other systems at the technical level, and we always decided never to pigeonhole ourselves as a chain for X. So if you're asking me to pigeonhole Avalanche, I can't. It would be a disservice to my community. We've built a beautiful community, and it has everybody in it. It has games in it. It has institutionals in it. It has, we have these meetings where I have stolid old gentlemen from central banks at one side of the table and complete degens on the other side, and in the middle are like some crazy gamers and people dressed as funny, whatever else in funny outfits. So we cover the entire field. You can say, look, you haven't done a great job of marketing, and maybe I would agree with you actually. So one of the strengths that we have is our technical stuff. And one of our biggest weaknesses is we've been focused on technical advancements, building the kind of system that can absorb the growth that's coming, and not as much on how we sound, how we appeal to people, how we attract users, etc. So I think in many ways we have the feel of an early system that's still trying to get the message out. And I hear that in your question, and I have to acknowledge that it's absolutely legitimate. And there is not an easy soundbite that I can give you. But it is the best tech when it comes to crypto use cases, and it is the most flexible one with the highest technology when it comes to speed, when it comes to latency, throughput, when it comes to decentralization.
Get 20% APY on ETH with the High Growth Vault by Kelp in one click. High Gain uses blue chip DeFi strategies with restaked ETH across Ave, Pendle, Usual, and Elixir, managed by strategy pros Ultra Yield and Upshift to deliver highest rewards on ETH, all in just one click. Deposit your ETH, receive High Gain ETH, and stay liquid in DeFi. Trade or use High Gain ETH on platforms like Pendle and Balancer while still stacking rewards. Follow along these steps to get started.
Point taken that it's not kind of your narrative and you want to give way to any sort of use case, but how Avalanche has stood out recently is with these like major partnerships like FIFA, Metaplex. I'm wondering if that's just like a conscious strategy from Ava Labs to go and secure these big partnerships, these institutions. How do these pieces fit into just like a long-term strategy?
Great question. So first of all, there have been a lot of announcements in the Avalanche space. quite a few of them have nothing to do with Ava Labs. So there were cases where, for example, the California DMV ended up coming on to Avalanche. We had nothing to do with it. They just called us one day and said, "Hey, we're going to retarget what we've built so far for Avalanche," and so that was fantastic. People just look at the technology and they realize, hey, this thing is the kind of thing we need. It gives us all the flexibility we want, and gives us everything we need, and gives us control over what we're digitizing, the assets we're digitizing. So no, Ava Labs is not behind any one of these. But the strategy that we do follow is very simple. I think the world has difficulty telling apart the real people in this space from the imposters, from the announcement engines, right?
Yeah.
So that we saw in the last cycle and the previous cycle, all these announcements, the announcements go nowhere. Reddit and blah, blah, blah partner. Yeah, well, where are they going to partner to? What's going to happen? And sure enough, after a year, that partnership falls apart. I don't think there is anything going on at the blockchain level on Reddit, right? Not today, not anymore. But a lot of money is paid. Those partnerships, those announcements are bought by these people who create these L2s that are essentially worthless technologically. They bring nothing to the table. I learned nothing from all of these L2s. So what is it that we're trying to do? Well, the world needs some exemplars. Until you show them, hey, this is a new way of doing business. This is a new way of looking at the world. They're stuck in the old framework. And why is it that the other chains are unable to get to where Avalanche is? It's not just because they lack the right set of people, but it's because they're trapped in the wrong mindset. A lot of the way they think leads them down certain alleyways that end up being blind alleys. That's how we saw like all those VDFs, VRFs, etc. All of them go into dead ends. So somebody has to say, look, if you do things this way, it's much better. And that's what we did with OTG, off the grid, this game. Until we came along, everybody thought, Axie Infinity was like the end-all of blockchain gaming, right? Everybody thought these like weird Ponzi-esque games were, this is how you did a blockchain game. I buy your token, I sit on it, and, etc. But there's some pay loop where new people pay old people or something like that. It creates a Ponzi-esque thing. So, and then suddenly OTG came along, and you can see that, I don't know if your listeners know anything about Off the Grid, but it's a game set on an island where people have got nothing to lose. There are zeros. Zeros go to the island to fight. They get their arms cut off. They get their legs cut off. They replace those with mechs, with mech arms, mech legs. They have armor. They have guns. They have bullets. And every time you shoot someone, you can steal, her arm, her leg, what have you.
Sounds very gruesome.
It's so gruesome. There's so much blood in this game, and not the most young kid friendly game. But it was a great game for teenagers and up. And anyway, so we showed the world how this game ought to be. Each and every one of those transactions, every time you kill someone and steal their arm or leg, that's an NFT transaction behind the scenes. It's happening on Avalanche, and it's happening so fast you can't even see. Like, it's just, there is no like type in the 0x bloody blah, what's your wallet? Is there 24 words? None of that. It's beautifully done. And we had to show the world how it is, how it could be. So that's an exemplar. We do an exemplar and we move on typically. And we don't get into these games. Sometimes projects come and shop themselves. So they're like, oh, hey, Polygon's giving us like $15 million to do something on top. How much would you give us? We say nothing, zero.
So Ava Labs does not pay for any of these partnerships?
No. There are partnerships that we've paid for. But often we find ourselves in a situation where people are trying to create a bidding war, and we don't get into bidding wars, just as a matter of policy. And if we typically say, look, if all you're after is money, go do one of these partnerships with some of these other chains. You'll do your announcement, and then when you need a chain that works, you'll come back to us. And almost all of them have come back to us. Everybody who tried to do a bidding war has come back to us. So, in the sort of the grand scheme of things, when we look at what's happening, these institutionals also are people who are in dire need of a solution. They typically have so many constraints that finding a solution that will accommodate them is not easy, right? So you can't just go to, if you're trying to sort of serve Wall Street needs, you're a regulated institution. You've got some assets, you'd like to put them on a blockchain rail, but you have constraints and restrictions on who can trade that asset. You can't allow North Koreans to trade that asset. You need a chain where that's not happening. Well, Avalanche can accommodate that use case, and other like single chain systems cannot. They're very different.
how flexible are Avalanche layer ones actually? So you're implying there that you can give some level of KYC to addresses. Like, how exactly can people customize their own L1s?
Yeah, great question. So it's infinitely customizable because by design, Avalanche L1s give you control over all of the validators that comprise the new chain that you want to create. So we've had institutionals that come in and say, look, every single address on my chain must be KYC AML'd, and it has to be done by the central entity. We could do that. We've had people who come in and say, we have a decentralized KYC AML process. Any one of these sets of people can validate users, but all my users need to be validated. We have people who say, look, we want an open network, no restrictions. We can accommodate that. We have people who come in and say something like, I want the EVM, I like the EVM, but I need additional features in it. I need a ZK pairing, I need a new cryptographic tool that Ethereum and other chains do not support. Well, then they can start their own EVM with those, what we call precompiles, added to the EVM. And we've even had people who came in and said, look, I want to build a super fast matching engine, a trading engine, and I can't use the EVM. It's too expensive, or there are a whole bunch of restrictions, and my use case doesn't require the generality of the EVM. And for those people, we have this thing called Hyper SDK, essentially a construction toolkit for virtual machines. And they can create their own virtual machine and build whatever they like. And as long as they adhere to some common standard for interoperability for chain-to-chain communication, they can build it, and it will be accommodated as part of the Avalanche ensemble of chains, and they can send messages to any other chain through a common mechanism.
So in this system where each Avalanche layer 1 is extremely customizable and flexible, and you give the builder the capacity to restrict who uses the chain or not, how do you maintain Avalanche's own core blockchain qualities of like permissionless and censorship resistance and decentralization?
Sure. So what I described applies to new chains people want to create on top of Avalanche. But Avalanche out of the box provides 3 chains that are there for everyone to use. And they're called the P chain, as the platform chain. That's where the coordination happens. That's where the communication primitives get their base data from. There's a contract chain that is it's called the C chain. That's where all the DeFi activity is. It's an open, permissionless network, one of the most decentralized systems out there with thousands of validators in it. And it's entirely open, no KYC, no AML, no anything of the kind. And then there's another one called the asset chain or the X chain. And so that's a very restricted chain. It's essentially kind of like Bitcoin. All it does is Bitcoin-like operations. There's no programmability. So if you just want to send assets around, that's a chain that you could use. And it's a very cheap chain to use. So those are the 3 that Avalanche supports out of the box. That's the 3 we start out with. And they are entirely open, fully decentralized, and absolutely no restrictions of any kind on who can use what.
So right now, how many Avalanche layer 1s are there?
Many hundreds, but I don't know the number off the top of my head. So yeah, I think I should know this number now that you're asking this. It's in the hundreds, and I don't know how many exactly off the top of my head.
And do you know the liquidity breakdown between Avalanche layer 1s and the C chain, or like C, P, and X chains?
So the P chain is for staking AVAX and for communication and coordination. So that's not where assets are created.
Okay.
And the X chain is not really used all that much. So the C chain is where a lot of liquidity is concentrated for your users. I think the C chain is where the DeFi activity usually takes place. And it doesn't really make sense, Camilla, to try to talk about the liquidity breakdown of our L1s, because it's not like, again, this is like layer 2 thinking being applied to Avalanche, because that liquidity isn't trapped there. So, for example, OTG has its own chain and has its own token called GUN, and the GUN token is on the OTG chain. But when you want to swap it, you swap it by going through the C chain in one click. So the fact that it's on a different chain doesn't really impact the liquidity situation. And
but for example, if there were like a DeFi or like a financial app that was launching its own Avalanche Layer 1,
Yeah.
would deposits in that protocol be in the Avalanche Layer 1 or in the seed chain?
It depends on how they structure it. Most likely, the bulk of the value would lie on that chain, but not necessarily. It depends on what the users do. So if users take that and put it into Benki or put it into Trader Joe to borrow against or to swap with or to provide liquidity, then the value will shift naturally to the C chain. So it all depends on how users move the value around between different services.
Right. Yeah, I'm wondering, like, I just want to gauge, maybe the TVL would be a good metric for this, the TVL of Avalanche Layer 1s versus of the C chain, to see kind of where most of the activity is happening, like where most of the users are.
Right. So, well, look, if we're going to look at, yes, that might be a way to do it. And we have extensive data. We have a data platform group that actually has that data. Again, it's not at my fingertips. And so I won't be able to tell you where the tokens are. TVL is a funny metric, right? So it's really easy for me to create a Camilla token right now, or for you to create it. I will buy, 0.0001 Camilla tokens for $1 from you, and then suddenly you're a trillionaire. So like suddenly you have this game that people have played with layer 2s where you create a lot of fake value out of nowhere. So I don't know if I love the TVL idea. If I look at where users are, I'm really, really happy to see that there are some C-Chain has millions of active addressees per day. I just looked at this morning, and we are having an all-time high of excitement and use on the C-Chain right now. We also have millions of users on various different chains. MapleStory just came on with their own chain. So that's also multiple millions of users that are using their chain. We had hundreds of thousands of actual users on a very niche chain. For example, we had this Korean partner that ended up digitizing the lunch credits that employers give to their employees for purchasing lunch at various Korean establishments. Hundreds of thousands of users right there. So I would like to look at it in terms of users and adoption. I'm here for the long term. I'm not here for messing around with DeFi metrics and juicing benchmarks and so forth.
Sure.
We've seen everybody else do this. And I'm really proud of what we've done so far, which is build things that people actually use.
Well, addresses can be very easily gamed.
Correct.
Too.
Correct. Absolutely. We don't game any of these things. So it's just happening naturally.
Goat Network is the first sustainable BTC yield chain, powered by decentralized sequencers using multi-coin POS. Goat's mission is to transform BTC and Doge from passive holdings into active, yield-generating assets through a one-of-a-kind economic model that tokenizes sequencer revenues, unlocking the full potential of BTC-Fi and meme-Fi in a way that's never been done before, and creating new yield opportunities for Bitcoin and Dogecoin holders. Supply BTC or Doge, earn BTC in perpetuity. Get started through our user rewards onboarding portal, onepiece.goat.network.
So yeah, the reason I was asking this is like I'm wondering if over time most of your activity and users are on Avalanche Layer 1s that are not very decentralized and are restrictive and perform a lot of KYC. Can Avalanche still say that it's a decentralized, permissionless
yes,
system?
of course. Hang on. So let's not get confused.
Okay.
So we can do more than other people. Don't let that confuse you, because yes, we're doing more, but our core activity of the C chain is essentially a direct match to what Ethereum does, what Solana does. That's absolutely more decentralized than Solana. We have thousands of validators. I don't know how many dozens of validators Solana has, but they're all very beefy machines. Only data centers can handle that stuff. It's not a decentralized system at all. And whenever Solana goes down, as far as I know, at least last I checked, they were re-downloading chain state from Google Cloud Services. So I'm proud to say that we've never had to do that. So absolutely. So when it comes to doing the core DeFi activities, we do exactly what the same rules as everybody else, and we outdo them at their own game of being decentralized. Now, what you're noticing is in the early days of Avalanche, when people were creating their own chains, they were typically closed systems. They did not want too many validators. In fact, they did not want any validators other than the few that they controlled. For example, there was in the early days, there was a Wall Street, again, walled garden for one of the Wall Street coalitions, and they wanted to trade repos. You know, you and I should not be validating that system. They don't want us, right? They only want the big institutions that are part of that coalition. So back then, the Avalanche APIs did not make it easy at all to create open systems. In fact, it was very, very difficult to, maybe impossible back then, especially in the early days. So for sure, it was impossible to use your token to create an open Avalanche L1. So that was fixed a long time ago, a couple of years ago, where it became possible to create your own token, to create an open L1. And now what we're seeing is a progression. People who started these private networks are trying to open them up. Games that had private closed networks are opening them up. So I think a lot of people had been taught, you know, when I got into this game, there was like some common narrative, which was you have two kinds of networks, open permissionless or closed private networks. Avalanche gives you a slider in between those two. You can start out as a closed network and open it up if you like. You can open it up to people who hold on NFT. You can open it up to people who have certain properties, who have beefy hardware or light hardware or what have you. You decide how to move the slider and how much to move it. And Avalanche is unique of all the systems in providing such a functionality.
Yeah, I think, obviously very valuable to institutions and companies and anyone who wants to have that sort of flexibility. But yeah, I think it's interesting to really kind of maintain the core properties of,
Absolutely
what
essential.
makes blockchains. Yeah.
No, we're in this game. Look, this is very important to me. And I don't want anybody misunderstanding anything just because of sort of the complication of the system model that we have. I got into this game because I wanted to make the world a better place. Okay, I did not get into this game to reinvent Wall Street with more complications, with more intermediaries. That's not what I'm interested in. When I look at other chains, I see a direct motion in that direction. This MEV extraction and the various things that people are doing to fight it are causing systems to be more centralized. And the techniques that they are proposing for fixing their own ailments, their own scalability issues, are making many chains incredibly centralized, with power concentrated in incredibly few hands. And if that's the future that we're going to live in, I don't want to be here, right? I would just eject and get out of here. That is decidedly not the direction that we're going to go with Avalanche. We will show the world exactly how to do this in the crypto spirit. We are here for building truly decentralized systems, and we have resisted every single push that would reduce the ability of a regular person to join the system, to validate the main chains, or would limit who can do what. I got into this partly because I was a graduate student in the 90s. I wanted to get some market data from Wall Street, and it cost $150,000. Right? So it's craziness. Whereas the mempool stream from Avalanche right now, free for everyone. And you're getting that stream on exactly the same terms as JP Morgan, as Goldman, as everybody else who's getting that same stream. So these matter to me immensely. And there's going to be no future where Avalanche compromises on decentralization or any of the core crypto values that we all stand for.
Perfect. Let's talk about AVAX, the token.
Sure.
So what's the core value driver for AVAX? And does it, it's a proof of stake system. So if you can provide kind of the staking metrics that you have now, do you have a liquid staking ecosystem as well? Or just would love to understand the tokenomics of AVAX and where kind of the proof of stake system is at now.
So AVAX is the central coin that makes the entire system work. It's useful for a whole range of activities. Let's go through them. It's useful for staking and securing the network. And the vast majority of AVAX right now is staked. So people are putting AVAX down and they're getting rewarded for participating in the system, for securing it. And So that neutralizes the coins and takes them out of circulation, at the same time as giving people the ability to participate in the network itself. So that's staking AVAX. We have also a liquid staking ecosystem that built itself around AVAX, and there are various liquid staking tokens that people can use. And let me see. AVAX is used as gas, clearly, for any of the main chains. So you can use it on the P chain, the C chain, and the X chain, and for carrying out transactions. I'm really, really happy to be talking to you right now when AVAX transaction costs are at an all-time minimum. I did a swap for 0.8 cents the other day, or maybe 0.2 cents, a couple of weeks ago. So it's incredibly low fees per transaction. I believe if you look at all of the L2s that exist, we are probably one of the cheapest of them that I would consider secure. So, but at the same time, the total protocol revenue is at an all-time high because in aggregate, we're clearing so many transactions per second. So we're at a very good spot when it comes to transaction fees times transaction volume. And so you can use AVAX to pay for gas. The third use for AVAX is for creating your own chain and for providing liquidity to tokens that people create. So if you create a meme coin, you want to tie down some AVAX so that there's some liquidity around that coin. So all of these DeFi activities demand up the price for AVAX and allow value to accrue from various different L1s that people have created to the main token itself that powers the system.
Got it. Perfect. So you've mentioned how activity on Avalanche is at an all-time high. We were covering this at the Defiant as well. What's driving this increased activity?
I'm actually not sure. There is a lot of excitement that got built up following the summit in England. We had a summit about a month ago or so, I think it was, and we ended up, I think, igniting the fire underneath our community. And following the summit, a lot of people went back and said, hey, this is a chain where there's a lot of exciting things happening. And I think the vast majority of the excitement comes from meme coins created on Avalanche. There's a lot of meme coin activity at the moment. But there's also a lot of excitement around these new coins, L1 coins coming out, Avalanche L1 coins coming out that people are taking positions in. The OTG, the gun token release also created a lot of excitement. And there are many others that are coming online. So, I think it's a combination of things, but probably mostly driven by meme coins at the moment.
Okay, meme coins and new tokens. I guess, that's crypto right now for you.
Right there. I know it's a time when everyone's holding their breath and waiting for the sort of the big catalysts, right? That are outside of us. The macro environment is not the most conducive for crypto right now. I do think that Bitcoin is undervalued by 10x, right? We should be 10x from here as a space. So people are waiting for that to happen. So there's a lot of money on the sidelines. We did also see, though, I think 8 months ago, we saw a huge resurgence of interest in crypto, where we had that initial euphoria when the administration changed over, and it looked like crypto was going to get its fair share at the legislative level. So I'm excited about what's about to happen at sort of the global scale.
So right now, it's really been mostly a Bitcoin story so far this year. It's been really remarkable to see how a lot of the kind of bull case for Bitcoin that it could become like a global reserve asset are seeming more and more likely now with the US dollar eroding in value. And more companies and countries stockpiling Bitcoin. So that's played out really well for Bitcoin. But the rest of the crypto market hasn't really benefited as much from
at all, actually. It's hardly at all.
Yeah. So what do you think will be the catalyst for the rest of the crypto market to catch up?
Okay, well, I can get into the catalyst, but let me just share this with you. I think this is entirely normal. Entirely normal. I've been in this space since 2002, right? And I've seen it. I've seen how people adapt to new technologies. And when it comes to crypto, they start always with Bitcoin. The value proposition is so simple. The system is so simple. It's easy to explain. Digital gold, you buy this, you send it to people. You don't really have to explain to them what gas is, what DeFi is, etc. No complications. It's so simple. What we're seeing right now is the boomer class just finally at large figuring out what Bitcoin is about. They're finally going into Bitcoin, starting with the commander-in-chief, right? He started with Bitcoin and so created a lot of excitement around it. And the days of Vitalik selfies are over. I think to Vitalik's, great happiness. I think he really didn't like that era. So now I think is the time of, like, for a while it was the time of selfies with Trump, right? So we now shifted gears, and it's the boomers that are driving it. And the boomers don't really understand complicated, nuanced stories. They understand Bitcoin and they buy Bitcoin. That never stays that way. It will always, that value created that way always shifts into other areas. People who play with Bitcoin overnight are won over, right? They're like, hey, I can do so much, right? I can borrow against this thing. If only I could take it to a chain like Avalanche, right? Which you can easily in one click. You can take your BTC, turn it into BTC.B on Avalanche, and use it as collateral. You don't have to sell your Bitcoin. You can borrow against it. And that happens again on the Avalanche chain. So we were one of the original fastest Bitcoin L2s. Right? Avalanche itself acted as an L2 for Bitcoin. So there's going to be value flow from BTC to other alts. And the real catalyst is going to be people's understanding of the technology. It is kind of like the internet, right? Initially, you go there like, whoa, cat pictures. Everybody looked at cat pictures. There was only one page, right? It was Mike and Mike Yang and I forget the name of the other fellow. Mike and whoever's. It became Yahoo, that page. There was one web page. Mike Yang would put the most interesting links on his page. You would go to that page and click on whatever is exciting, and mostly it was cat pictures. And so then suddenly you have different services. You have social media online, you have dating online, you have hospitals online, healthcare online, et cetera, et cetera. So that differentiation will take place as people absorb this technology. That's the real catalyst. But in the short term, we have the stablecoin bill. That is a huge step forward for the space. It really simplifies life for people, not only in the US, for stablecoin issuers around the globe, but also for everybody using stablecoins. Wonderful big development. There is the market structure bill that's in the works, and we're hoping that we'll see that turn into law in the next session of Congress. So that's going to be another big catalyst for DeFi and a lot of related applications. And there are commensurate motions in other countries. Like Korea is actually very, very ahead, and we're very well situated there. Japan, and many other countries are taking steps for crypto normalization. And that, I think, will open up the spigots for everybody with something valuable to put those things online. And assets want to be digital, right? You leave people alone. They want their asset to be in digital form so they can send it around, so they can do things with it, and not have to go to a centralized government website that's always terrible, always getting hacked, etc. That can't be audited except for a few people. So these systems, transparent, auditable blockchain systems, are so much better than what we have right now.
Okay, so it will be mostly regulatory developments. What will drive non-Bitcoin assets forward in the following months? Yeah,
two things: the regulatory developments and people figuring out that, hey, I can do more things with coins other than hold them and sell them.
Yeah.
What if sending crypto felt more human? Pulse just launched Red Packets, a new way to gift tokens with meaning. It's gasless, gamified, and claimable inside group chats only. Think airdrops meet social cues on-chain. Backed by smart wallet tech and live across major L2s, Red Packets turned communities into microeconomies of gratitude and growth. No seed phrases, no friction, just connection with value. Check it out at pulse.social.
The other big issue happening is stablecoins. It's been it feels like a tipping point of, okay, now all of the major payments companies and banks and fintechs are looking at this or adopting this, or outright like integrating it. We saw the Shopify news recently. They'll be using Ethereum Layer 2 base. How does Avalanche fit into this kind of the stablecoin wave?
So we identified very early on that stablecoins were the way of the future. It doesn't take much intelligence to look at the whole space and realize, hey, this class of coins, they play a critical role for many people. And your viewers in Argentina, Brazil, Turkey, countries that have historically had high inflation, they know all too well why one needs a stablecoin. So these things are incredibly valuable, and so it was wonderful to see what's happening with them. Now, here's what I think is currently happening. We heard about CBDCs, central bank created digital currencies. None of them have come to be. Instead, what's happening in the US and around the world is that private issuers are the ones that are creating these stablecoins. And those private issuers are currently, in the current economic environment, collecting a hefty fee for creating these coins. So it's Circle and Tether are essentially giving you an interface to treasuries. And treasuries should yield about at least, 5%, right? Around this 3 to 5%. And none of that is going to the users. But the utility provided, especially to foreign stablecoin holders, is so high that people are okay with foregoing that premium, that yield. And we as a community are okay with some of these entities, centralized entities, collecting that premium. I think that's going to have to change. I think there is more coming. On Avalanche, we have a close relationship with the Agora coin that is coming out with a scheme where some of the yield is being kicked back to the users. So you don't just hold a stable, you hold a stable, but you don't just hold it at the end of the day. You also get some interest, kind of like a money market account. And that's going to be a direction that we're going to see more stablecoin issuers take, because it's the easiest way to acquire new users. Why should you just hold Circle and have it sit there when you could hold Agora and collect some additional interest as well? So that's going to be the stablecoin evolution path. And what I think will ultimately happen, and should ultimately happen, is that at some point, looking at this situation, central banks will say, hey, why would I let somebody else collect this premium for me? Why would I not be the person issuing the coin directly? I'm a central bank. I know my asset. And it's very easy for me to create a new coin on Avalanche. It takes about 20 seconds, if not that, if not less. So what do I think will happen in the long term? CBDCs will come back, and central banks will be directly issuing their own currencies instead of having all these private issuers. That's a much better world, because I would rather trust just the central bank than trust an intermediary using the resources of the central bank to provide the currency. And instead of two people, I would rather trust one entity alone.
There has been a lot of concern from both privacy advocates or people in the crypto space about CBDCs coming, because it can create a very scary scenario where the central banks are issuing digital dollars, and that's the only version of fiat of money that you have. Then governments can very easily control citizens.
Absolutely. If we are back to that, though, so you added one critical part. So if we go to a new world where central banks are the only legitimate issuer, then we have a huge problem, right? So if they prohibit other people from issuing currencies, then we have a huge problem.
Yeah.
So that should not. Hopefully, we won't see those. I think with the current stablecoin build, that is definitely not the case, and I don't think we're moving towards a future where that's going to happen anytime soon. But I do think at some point, central banks will want to get into the game as an additional player, not as an only player that strikes out existing players.
Yeah. No, and the yield point is definitely interesting. I hope that we see regulation move towards that, because that part was excluded from the Genius Act. So right now, stablecoin issuers can't offer a yield directly. I understand, but there's many different projects kind of like trying to go around that and do offer yield to the user. It does make sense, but we'll see. I think the reason why USDC and I don't know if Tether, like the Tether doesn't really abide by US. It's not as compliant as Circle. But yeah, I think that's why we don't see kind of USDC yield delivered directly yet. But.
Right. Creates all sorts of regulatory hassles right now.
Yeah. To start wrapping up, I'd love to hear what the next major milestones for Avalanche are.
Sure. So what we did is in the first couple of years of our existence, we focused very much on the multiple chains working as one vision. We made multiple chains work seamlessly together. And what we're going to do moving forward is speed up the operation of a single chain. You already saw what I alluded to before, which is we made a bunch of changes to our fee management scheme, to our block space management approaches, so that the cost of a single transaction is drastically lower compared to everybody else. We're going to take that even lower, and we're going to speed up what we can do on a single chain by orders of magnitude. So millions of transactions per second on a single chain is something that we're striving towards. To that end, we're building our own execution engine that's highly parallelized. We're building our own database that is built for crypto use cases. So especially the latter is a huge enabler for what is to come, because everybody else in this business is essentially using slow databases to handle demanding loads, and we want to break out of the sort of the monopoly of level DB, which is the system that everybody uses for storing their data, and show the world how much faster these systems can be when you manage your own data yourself. So those are coming in the next year.
Sorry about that. Will it be similar to your other kind of central chains? Like it would like a C chain, but for speed?
Actually, the way we're going to put it out, it's not really decided yet. We're working on the core technology, and we're in the final stages of it. But what I think is going to happen is we're going to just do a drop-in replacement for level DB. So everything that uses Avalanche will get a speed up.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So complete replacement by API compatible, just a drop-in. So I'm really excited about it. I think the very first initial installment is done for robustness and security. The speed improvements are going to be significant, but modest. And then we have some tricks up our sleeve that will greatly improve our operational.
By how much?
A lot. So let me not steal our thunder from a few months from now. When we release Firewood, the database.
Firewood?
Firewood is the name of the database. It's like forests, firewood, I don't know, on fire, forest on fire.
so what's the timeline for that?
A few months from now. It's already in testing. So the system is complete. It works. I've seen it work. Runs everything that we've got. And now we have to make sure it's robust and test it and audit the code, etc., before it can go out. So really excited about that single chain performance. And after that, we're at a very interesting point. In the meantime, we've been working on building our own wallet to show the world how easy it can be to use multiple chains at the same time, how seamless it can be. So there's a wallet that we put out called Core, and people should check it out. It's very different from MetaMask. It's not painful to switch chains. It's not something that requires user intervention, even for most cases. And so it makes life so pleasant and happy that it's just kind of worth a look. And I'm really excited about the design principle, which is make the wallet the front end to chain services, all of them. Don't force the user to go from website to website, from one potentially insecure location to another potentially insecure location, and get them to do crazy interactions. Just try to simplify the whole thing so anybody can use it. I'm really excited about that. At the same time, I have some other side projects that are in the works. I mentioned one of these 2 years ago. We call it coin-operated agents. So we're building a chain where the programming of the chain, so sort of the virtual machine of the chain, is based on AI. So every validator has an LLM in it, and you interact with the chain in your own native language. So you can say, hey, here's a payment, and then you just write it out. Here is a payment, right? And in the amount of 5 AVAX or what have you. But you can say much more complicated things. Here's a payment for Camilla's new movie, $5,000 in support, assuming you can raise $5 million by September, or else I want my money back. You can write this in English, and it's executed by on your behalf by essentially these LLMs in the sky. And you can, it doesn't have to be English. It could be Tagalog, right? We all interact in our own native languages. Nobody has to learn smart contract programming. I'm really excited about this. The LLM technology isn't quite there yet. Don't disregard what the AI folks are saying. It's not quite ready for this use case, but it's getting there. And we are at the forefront of AI integration into blockchains.
Will this again be implemented across all of
No, this is a separate chain. Separate chain. And we want it to be separate because I'm pretty sure that there will be bugs in LLM engines that people will use to do all sorts of nefarious things. So this is going to be an experimental system at first. I advise people not to put all their life savings into it, and we'll build up as we gain confidence in the AI engine that's interpreting our words. So those are some of the things that are happening. There's a lot of partnerships that are happening. There are a lot of independent efforts that are bringing value onto the chain. Really, really excited about those. And overall, where do I see the space going? Look, this is a game where the chain that can absorb the growth grows the most. It's that simple. And so by architecture, by consensus technology, Avalanche is in the best position, in my opinion, to absorb the growth that is about to come. Different use cases do not want to share the same space with others. Your IoT network should not be affected from somebody else's NFT creation. We saw this time and time again. We saw that this was a flaw. And if people think it's a feature, they're deluded and confused. So we have, I think, the only top few chain that has the technology to address this big issue. You don't see these fee spikes on Avalanche because we have partitioning, we have fee isolation between Avalanche L1s. So I'm really excited about where the world will take us. Every single digital asset, from your house deed to your car title, should be on a chain someplace. And in fact, I should mention this, 200 billion worth of real estate records in Bergen County, New Jersey, are being digitized on Avalanche. And that's just in one spot in New Jersey. I mentioned the car titles in California before, how they came to us to digitize what they do, as well as the other folks that are building up on top of us. So there's a lot of excitement, I think, for real-world assets. We pioneered with BlackRock and others the digitization of funds, and these financial assets also need a digital home. So all of those need a home need chains on which this activity takes place. And we worked really hard to build them a flexible environment, a fast, scalable environment for them to use. And I'm really excited about the growth to come.
Awesome. Well, that's a great place to end this conversation. It was so great having you. Really exciting to see everything that's happening on Avalanche. And yeah, excited to see these new chains and improvements coming live, which we'll definitely cover here. And yeah, hope to have you back in a couple months and see how they all play out.
Thank you so much, Camilla. Always fun to talk to you.